Well, we are very privileged to be interviewing Mr. Stephen Newhouse. And can you tell us what year were you born?
I can tell you that I was born February 19th, 1944.
Okay. You and I are very close. I was born in 42.
Oh,
So where were you born?
I was born in Newcastle, Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah. That's,
My father was a chemical engineer who had taken an assignment with American Cyanomids during the war.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
And I think they were producing war material. And so I was born originally, my family was from Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
And eventually we went back there, and then ultimately I came here for Caterpillar.
That's great. That's what people keep asking me when I came, is that, yeah, yeah. So were you born in a hospital, home, somewhere else?
I was born in a hospital,
Okay.
and I don't remember which one. We only lived there I only lived there about 6 months, and then the end of the war came. My dad took another job, and we moved. There were some serious explosions at American Cyanamid. They were working on explosives in the war. My dad was burned in one of them, and
Oh, my.
went back not badly, went back as a rescue worker to help take people out that had been injured. And my mother said, "That's it."
Not going to do this anymore.
And so they moved back to Ohio, and I finished growing up in Ohio, and then wound up taking a job at Caterpillar after I got out of grad school.
Very good.
Came here.
Very good. So were you married when you came here?
I was.
Okay. Did you meet your wife in
I met my
college?
wife in Columbus. I was out of school working for a period of time. I met her while I was working, and we wound up getting married. I went back to school, and she worked, and I worked, and went to school, and wound up with 2 kids, and came here. And when we came here, we had two daughters.
How old were they then?
They were 9 and 3, I believe. And in those days, Morton was, newcomers to Morton was a little bit of a slow process.
Yeah.
And so it took them a little while to get in, and not so much the younger one, but my 9-year-old.
Yeah.
But she ultimately fit in, made a great group of friends, and they all went off to college, and some the same one, some somewhat to others, and
Great.
but has kept many friends from Morton through now, in their 50s.
And what did you do at Caterpillar?
When I came here, I had responsibility. I was in the public affairs department. I had responsibility for press relations. I had national and international press.
Wow.
But a good portion of my career, most of my career, was marketing and marketing related.
Good.
And I spent one period. We lived in Morton from '77 when we moved here. I had 3 years in with CAP in Ohio. Came here in '77, '96 I transferred to a job in the UK. Lived in England from late '96 to 2000, and during the time we were gone, we kept a condo here where our younger daughter lived, and she had started working for CAT after college. And we stayed there when we came back, and then we moved back home in 2000 and came back to Morton.
That's
And
great.
this has become home for us.
I know a lot of folks from Caterpillar went to the UK for one reason or another. Where were you located in the UK?
We lived halfway between Durham City, where the cathedral is, one of the
Okay.
great cathedrals of the world, and Newcastle, a place called Chesterley Street.
You are tied to Newcastle. It's
And
all
I
over.
am. And people used to ask me where I was from, and I'd say Newcastle, and they'd say, "Well, you've lost your accent." And so, well, it's wrong, Newcastle.
Yeah.
But
Did
Morton became home for us.
Sure.
And we've been tied to it ever since. My wife is very closely tied to Morton. We like the quality of life here.
Oh, yeah.
We talked with Gordon and Jean Ann and others in conversations. But there's something unique about Morton. There's the type of person who comes to Morton has some special quality. Honest, forthright people with solid values, and those are things that we treasure, and it's always for us been to make the difference in living in Morton and living somewhere else.
That's great. So did you stay in the condo, or did your daughter stay in the condo, or did you buy a house after you got back?
When we got back, we bought a house. We kind of boxed the compass. We started out when we came, lived on Oregon, right at the corner of Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
And then we bought a house in Waldheim.
Okay.
We were in Waldheim till we moved to the UK, and we had the condo was in Prairie Village, and we just used it. Mostly it was for our daughter's benefit. We
Sure.
used that when we came back, and then when we came back, she was ready to get married. We sold the condo and we bought a house on St. Mark Circle. So now we're on the south end, in an area that I helped approve when I was on the Plan Commission
Oh, how
back
fun.
in the 80s or 90s.
That's
If you'd have asked me 20 years ago, or well, I shouldn't say
Yeah.
20 years ago, but 30 years ago, if I ever thought I would live there, I was absolutely not. There wasn't anything there.
That's
You remember.
right. I do remember.
We basically stopped at Idlewood. and
Yeah.
Even Idlewood at that
Yeah.
time was brand new.
Yeah, I'm not sure Oregon was there when I got here, but it was.
Oregon
neat.
was.
Was it
on,
then?
On the south side of Jackson.
Ah, yes.
The north side of Jackson, it was not
Wasn't.
there. You are
I
correct.
do remember
Yeah.
that going in. Oh, that's good. What did you miss in England about Morton when you were there?
I think that partly the ease of getting things done. The close environment you have with your friends and neighbors here, and you know everybody, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, your banker, your doctor, your lawyer.
Exactly.
And of course that was not the case, and you didn't necessarily need all of those people in the UK, but it wasn't the same way, and of course it was a different sized town, about 50,000, and so it felt different. It was a great experience, one of the great experiences of our lives, and we loved every minute of it, but it's not the same as being home. So while we were thrilled to be there and had a wonderful time, great experience, we were gratified to come back, and by that time we had a grandchild on the way, and it was just very appropriate to move back. And we left. We had so many great people over the years. We had so many great people on the Plan Commission, which was really instrumental in getting all this done. It's kind of underrated as an organization. And that was another curious thing at Morton, and I always loved it. Is you go to talk to people when I was in office, and they'd say, well, yeah, I watched the village board meeting on television the other night, and I always had two reactions to that. The first one was sort of like, don't you have anything else to do? and the other one was, how wonderful that people really take an interest in their own government and participate, because that's what makes
It's
municipal
true.
government work.
It's
and we
true.
had huge numbers of people that came very constructively.
Yeah.
And said, why don't you do this, or we ought
That's
not
right.
do that, or whatever. They had good, cogent
Right.
arguments, and were willing to put their names to it and their time, if need be, and commit to
It's
doing
very
something for the
It's
community.
very true. That's neat. So he came back from England, and that he has been a government leader for a long time in our town. And he came back and started giving again, and we were talking about the giving nature of Morton, and that was one thing that he liked about the coming back to Morton, was the character of the town. He said the values and the character of the town. They were glad, although they enjoyed England very, very much.
As a matter of fact, we made some very good friends in Britain, and we invited them to come and visit.
Ah,
And so one couple did, and they came to Morton, and they were just knocked out by Morton. They just couldn't get over what a really fine little town this was. And they said, it's so clean and orderly.
that's true.
And said, yes, that is the case.
That's true.
Unfortunately, we frequently think of England in terms of Miss Marple and
Yes.
all these tea-drinking, highly civilized people. And,
Yes.
and a portion of it has kind of lost that characteristic, and
Yeah.
it's frequently even places where you find a lot of empty bottles and pizza packages
Yeah,
and
stuff
whatnot.
like
So
that.
they were astonished at how pleasantly organized we were, and how clean it was, and how
Yeah.
responsive everybody was. to
Sure,
everything.
sure.
And that, again, that's just a characteristic of Morton.
If you walk early in the morning, you will see people with sacks
Yes,
going along picking up
I
garbage
have done that.
as they are.
Yes.
Now that I'm retired, I do that too.
yes. I have done that.
I do that too.
Yeah.
So that's
Again, it's a characteristic of Morton. I will say it doesn't happen other places, but it certainly happens
sure,
here.
sure.
You know.
Let's see. How many generations of your family have lived in Morton? Do your children still live?
No, my daughters are grown up, of course, and the older one lives in Palatine. She's the one
Okay.
with children, so 3 children.
Okay.
And so older grandson just started at U of I
Oh,
this
my.
past week. And younger one works for Caterpillar, and she's currently in Milwaukee. She spent 5.5 years in Australia,
Oh, wow.
and so we don't know where she will be next. but-
Does she still like to travel then?
Oh, yes, yeah, it's in all of us, it's in our blood, I think. And so we are certainly first generation Morton, and I am only second generation American on my father's side. My
Ah.
grandfather came here as a boy from Russia, escaping persecution.
Wow.
And my mother's people, Anglo,
Yeah.
have been here virtually forever, came in the early 1800s, but
In
I know.
Pennsylvania, part of it.
they came to Ohio.
They came to
My
Ohio.
mother and dad had moved because of my dad's taking the
Okay.
job. So
Got it.
they were originally from Columbus, and then my
And then-
dad died, we went back to Columbus.
Did you go to Ohio State?
I did. I'm a
All right.
Buckeye.
All
Dyed in
right.
the wool, Woody Hayes Buckeye.
What did
From
you
Morton?
think when you came?
We looked and had relatively short time to try to find a house.
Sure.
And it was a seller's market,
And
During that period.
what year was that?
77.
Okay.
It was in the fall of
Yeah.
77.
Okay.
And it was a seller's market. You could not find a house anywhere. We looked all over
Wow.
Peoria, and I mean, you could be standing there and somebody would name the asking price, and the next person would say, I'll raise that by $5,000.
Wow.
So we came, people had recommended Morton to us. And we looked around and there was one house available in Morton, 389 North Oregon Avenue.
Oh.
Right there at the corner, picked brick and
Sure.
white siding, right there at the corner. And it belonged to the real estate agents, Arise Purvis, do you remember
I
her?
do.
So Purvis, I can't remember the other two family names that were associated with her, but they owned it. And they made us a favorable price on it because it was coming to the end of the season, and they said,
Sure.
we'd really like to. So we took it. It was a nice house. It was
Yeah.
a 3-bedroom ranch, worked for us.
Sure. Good
And
school system. Good school,
yes.
school
So-
district.
Among my early memories, I think, or our early memories were how nicely organized everything was in Morton, quality of life here, ease of services, and I think just quality of life, I think, is the best way to
Sure.
describe Morton.
Sure.
Morton was, you could walk anywhere, you didn't have to worry about what happened.
Yeah,
You know,
for
kids
sure.
went out to play, you could be pretty sure they hadn't gone too far or couldn't get in much trouble.
Right.
And my wife and I used to walk a lot, so we would just walk all over the place, and you didn't have to worry about, where you went.
Do you have one memory that kind of sticks out when you guys either when you first came or when you came back from the UK, a memory of the village that you?
I guess my strongest memory is coming here. We drove. We bought 2 cars. And my older daughter was me in one car, and the younger daughter was my wife in the car behind me. And my daughter went to sleep. And we had driven for a long time. She was asleep in the back seat. She woke up, I guess, somewhere around Bloomington.
Oh,
And
okay.
looked out the window of the car, looked around the flat countryside, and says, "Gosh, Dad, this looks like the Wizard of Oz." and so it was. I think that one of the things that hit us and really hit me was after the rolling hills of Ohio and
Yes.
Mentor, where we'd been, which had a pretty diverse terrain. Here we were in this flat farmland, but I came to love the beauty of the farmland. And you may
yes.
remember I wrote a piece about it once for the paper.
I do remember that.
And I think coming back from the UK, the principal memory was, I think, how much Morton had recovered from the economic damage in the 80s.
Yes. Oh,
you
boy.
remember when the bumper
Sure do.
stickers last went out, turned out the lights, and
Yeah.
Jackson Street was almost empty,
Was.
and Witzigs had gone out, and so
Yeah.
there'd been a lot of, and so when we came back, the little city we lived in the UK was celebrating its 1500th anniversary. And when we got here, there were flags up for Morton Township celebrating its 150th anniversary. I said, you dropped a zero. But it was, I think, the sense of how well Morton had progressed during that time.
Yeah.
And then Mayor Roth asked me to rejoin the Plan Commission.
That's so good. Is there anything you miss about the way it used to be? Things that
I certainly miss Witzig's.
I know, me
And
too.
for 2 or 3 reasons. One was it was such a neat place,
Yeah.
but the other was it was our store. You know,
Yeah.
it was a family owned. You went in there and there was Harold Witzig, you know,
Yes.
the Witzig boys. And,
Yes.
and sometimes they call me up and say, hey, we just got some suits in. There's one here that I know you like these suits. You know, you've got one in your
They
size. You know,
did.
yes.
They really did.
And I got to know the Witzigs there, got to know Harold Witzig fairly well. And I just had such high regard for
Absolutely.
Harold. He was a very gentle and civilized man.
He sure was.
And so I missed Witzigs, and of course we all missed the Peppermill.
Yes.
But I think there wasn't much else that we probably, because there's so many other good things that had been done. So
It's true.
I think if we'd have been born and raised here, maybe we would have had a little different perspective. If you talk to some of the older folks, you go to coffee with Bud Witzig, Bud Zobrist, you get a completely different view of Morton way back when.
Way back when.
And so if we'd have had more of that kind of experience, it might have made a difference. But we lost Dean Grimm just a few years ago.
I know.
But Dean and I came to be good friends. Again, didn't always agree with him, but when I joined the Plan Commission, he was the chairman. And much of what I learned about operating in village government, I learned from Dean.
Very good.
I always had a very high regard for Dean. Again, didn't always agree with him. Sometimes we argue about things. But for Dean, you always knew where you stood.
That's right.
And he was willing to make commitments for the village of Morton. And he did more than once without anybody even knowing about it.
Yeah.
He just did it. And sometimes in the face of criticism, if people didn't know what he was doing, never said a word. That was just Dean. And I used to love his TV commercials. Remember, and he'd say, it's December, and he would have his end of the year sale for December. And so those things were kind of empty spots when we came back. His business was sort of phasing out by then.
Sure.
And,
I guess one thing that impressed me, and I bet you experienced that too, was how open the leadership of the town is to the people.
yes.
There's not a layer of, I'm up here and you're down there. It's all, we're together for Morton.
All the years I served, about 30 altogether,
Yeah, wow.
the people I served with brought a selfless commitment to the community, a genuine desire to do the right thing.
Right.
I never encountered anybody who sought to enrich himself or herself. It didn't mean we always agreed,
Right.
but these were people who sat down, and we had, despite the criticism sometimes, about as transparent government as it was possible to have. And there were never, during my time in government, I never saw, now, it may have happened, I know about it early on, but I don't think it did. I never saw any backroom deals or anything. Now, there are some transactions that take place in closed session that are required to take place in closed session because they involve business confidentiality. But before you can act on them, they have to be public. Then they come up for discussion of the board. They have to be presented to the public. But nobody, in my experience, Plan Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, Village Board, all those years, and all the years I knew of before that, not one person who was inaccessible or manipulative or sought to feather his or her own nest. And generally speaking, if you had an issue, you could call up the mayor or anybody else and hey, tell me what you're interested in, or come to a meeting, or I'll meet you for a cup of coffee, or whatever it is. But as you say, it was a very straightforward
It is.
government, and
Open.
people had access to it. Probably had more access in a lot of cases than they took advantage of.
That's right.
But we had critics and in some cases people who impugned the board inappropriately, but,
I think you might always get that.
well, I don't think it's not avoidable.
No.
But people have a certainly entitled to and perhaps have a responsibility to challenge their government. But it needs to
Yeah.
be based on factual information
Mhm.
and, an informed challenge. And generally speaking, that's what we found. People would come and, as I said, why don't you do this, or why are we doing that?
Sure.
I've got an idea to do X. I do remember you when I first met you.
Okay.
We had taken children's books out.
Oh,
And my
okay.
daughter, you may remember this, my daughter had a book, and I think I got a notice from the library. And I came and said, I turned that book in. And you said, we don't have it. I don't think you turned it in. And I think at that point there was some question about, do I need to pay for the book?
Mhm.
And I said to you at the time, well, I'm sure I turned that in, and I don't think I'm responsible for it. And you said very diplomatically something, before you take that.
What do you like about the park, or what did your kids use about the park system? And
The kids
did
used,
they do swim lessons? Did they do?
they were in various activities. They did not, they both swim, but they weren't in swimming sports. They were mostly in dance and music in school plays.
Sure.
Remember Barbara Moat?
Sure, I
The-
do.
the-
Oh,
the,
yes.
show choir.
Yes,
They were both in
absolutely.
show choir, and the younger daughter was in the 2 or 3 annual plays in high school. We did use the parks. Morton is peculiar in the sense that the park board is sort of very separate from
Sure.
the other political entities.
Right.
So we've got a village board, a park board, a school board,
A
a
library board.
township, library board, and I
Mm-hmm.
argued all the time I was in office for a kind of a closer relationship, and Norm
Mm-hmm.
Derflinger did try to create a kind of a joint.
We did have
Okay,
joint
we-
board meetings, and that was
Yes.
fun. That was good.
It worked out well. I
Communication
thought it could have
good.
gone a little further, and I used to send people copies of the Oregon School Planning Handbook,
Hmm.
which was a really interesting piece of work, but its chief virtue was its illustration of how the school board, the municipalities, and the park boards had worked together to plan and create the kind of outcomes that they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And Morton's municipal and school and park board activities have always been sort of parallel but separate.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's one thing that I probably would change is I'd like to see a little bit more integration
And
than
communication.
that we have had, yes, and we've had
Mhm.
over the years. There are arguments for and against, but I think
Sure.
that and we have had good cooperation in
We
in
have.
projects. We had the plaza
Mm-hmm.
was an example where we had worked with the park board, make sure that we weren't usurping their authority. It's
Right.
not a park.
Right.
But took some of their suggestions and were able to integrate the Veterans Memorial there that
Right.
probably was not going to get built as it had been presented to the park board for lack of funding.
Yes.
So that was a successful outcome, and I think the park board's done a great job over the years,
Mhm.
especially with the continued development of Idlewood Park.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't have any criticism to make. It's kind of an observation that other places, they are somewhat more integrated,
Mm.
maybe sometimes successfully and maybe sometimes not.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it's done Morton any harm, but I think it
No.
would be, certainly for long-term planning projects, I could make an argument for a
Mhm.
higher level of integration, school board,
Sure.
village board, and the park board.
So-
They've always been responsive,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we always try to have somebody from the park board on the plan commission.
Right. And
But-
that's important
Yes.
because that's a real draw to Morton, don't you think? What do you think are the biggest draws when people are looking? You said a downtown and the schools.
We itemized them when we were working on the creation of the Economic Development Council and some of the
Mhm.
downtown planning that we had proposed and so forth.
Mhm.
And I think, you know, the chief one is quality of life, and Morton's residential quality.
Yes.
That is, I'm going to use the word unique.
Yes,
That
it
means
is.
one of a kind, implies there aren't any other, and there certainly are other communities, but locally, I think we are unique in that respect. So we have a very high quality of life. We have an excellent school system. We're economically viable. That's extremely important and prosperous. We have an excellent park network that is true in recreational activities.
Yes.
If there's something you're interested in, it's hard not to find somebody in Morton who does it or
right.
wants to do it.
Disc golf.
Yes. So those would certainly be some of the
Things.
top ones and the attractions. But when we did interviews and talked about people coming here to the Economic Development Council, typically what you would hear is quality of life, school district, downtown, a viable downtown.
Right.
And as I said earlier, the facts are incontrovertible. You can any seminar you want around the globe, from towns our size, moderate-sized communities, school district, and downtown. If you begin to lose either one of those, you don't have to drive very far from here. You go down into southern Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, and some of those places that at one time had viable downtowns,
Yeah, I
and they're just gone, and there's nobody there. So keeping a viable downtown is a critical
Right.
quality for Morton. And again, I'm so pleased that we've been successful. And since I've been gone, that success has continued.
It's so good.
And we just have an outstanding
Yeah.
downtown anymore, and it just gets better and better.
Yeah. And the Pumpkin Festival, of course, is so important to Morton. Did your family over the years participate? Did you attend? Did you do the rides? Did you
We
work
went-
in the booths? What did you do?
Because I traveled a lot for Caterpillar, I wasn't much of a volunteer in those days other than the plan
Well,
commission.
you
But
weren't
we
there
always took the
probably.
kids. We went
Mhm.
when the kids were small, and then I went, they were grown up, but I went certainly as a trustee, I went because I felt
Sure.
that I needed to be there. The Pumpkin Festival exists because Morton cans, does not grow, but cans about 85% of
Yeah.
the nation's pumpkins.
Isn't that amazing?
And it is amazing, but it's all tied to Nestle and what their plans are. And it is really important, again, that was another job that the Economic Development Council did, working closely with Nestle to make sure that we met each other's expectations. And so when
Sure.
we took the 2014 Chamber Economic Council expedition to Switzerland, Kim Eulig and I were the official visitors to Nestle headquarters in Vevey,
Oh, okay.
and make sure that we had reason to believe that we would have a pumpkin festival that was associated with real pumpkin canning
Yeah.
in Morton for the future, and
That's good.
came away, with good prospects that'll go on for a long time yet.
Yes, yes. I think that's something that really draws the community together to the Pumpkin Festival and the volunteering.
Yes, and again, that is, I think, when you talk about characteristics of Morton, that is again something that's unusual. The number of hours that people put in and the commitment that people make to that.
That's right.
And the fact that people come from miles around. My older daughter, 50 years old plus, friends from Morton, this time of year, they're talking to each other about who's going back to Morton for the Pumpkin
Yes.
Festival. A lot of them do.
It's true.
So it is something that seems to keep its attraction for Morton kids who've grown up and gone elsewhere, an attraction for lots of people that come here for, I'm not sure what reason, but they sure like the Pumpkin Festival, and they come and
They sure do.
good on us for doing it, and good for
Yeah.
all of those people that help make it work. That have my absolute respect, because it is hard work and a lot of time, a big commitment.
It is great. You know, I'm having such fun. Do we have to stop at 3? Or do you want us to stop now? I don't know.
No, we can go till 3. I think Susan.
I mean, that's good. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to Do you remember any of the, well, you've already mentioned Dean Grimm, local town characters,
Oh, yeah.
that kind of thing. How about, are there any family members or family member accomplishments in your family that you'd like to have remembered that are connected? Well, your kids went with swing choir, you said, the show choir.
Yes, they did. And
Were they bandies too? Were they?
No,
Didn't do
they
band?
were in the performing arts,
Okay,
and older daughter went when she was 15 with the Barbara Moats class to Europe, to Germany,
nice, nice.
and my heart in my mouth, hoping she would come home again. She did.
That was good. Was
but-
Rudy Husick, was he connected with that group that went, or?
No.
They didn't
This
go
was
to
strictly
the
a musical.
Sister City.
No, there was that. I don't
Okay.
think that Sister City thing
Existed
ever
then?
really materialized. Because I
Okay.
got involved in Sister City stuff a while back, and we just never could get it going. And I heard
Sure.
a lot about. I didn't know Rudy, but I knew his name. I think maybe I met him once, but he had tried to do that, and I'm not sure what happened to
Yeah.
it. But Sister Cities in recent years everywhere have kind of floundered, I think, a little
Sure.
bit from what I know of them. And so this was strictly the itinerary of musical appearances that they
That's
had made,
great.
and they started out in Holland and in Amsterdam, and made their way through Germany, and then
Nice.
came back, and it was a great experience for my
That,
for my
that is,
daughter.
that is great. Let's see, we talked about Witzigs, and we talked about the library. Which grade school did your kids go? They had to go to Lincoln. They went to Lincoln?
Went to Lincoln. I think they both went to Lincoln, yes.
Yeah, okay. Oh, grocery stores. You know, that's one thing that I've noticed about this town, is that we can't really, 3 grocery stores just don't make it in this town. If we get a third one, somebody dies.
We worked hard on that when we formed the Economic Development
Yeah.
Council.
Yeah,
A whole bunch of things play into that. One is the advent of the large-scale stores like Sam's Club
Right.
and Costco.
right.
One difficulty is that we just aren't at the critical mass
You're right.
that will support. We talked to a lot of
Yeah,
grocery store leadership. Jennifer Daly, when she was head
Yeah.
of the Economic Development Council, worked with some that she had known from her previous assignments.
sure.
And we're just kind of on the edge.
Yes.
We did manage to, I think, to provide the basis for Kroger investing some more money here, and that became
Mhm.
successful, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we have Walmart, which is a
Killed
sort of a
Sullivan.
grocery
Killed
store.
Sullivan's.
Yeah,
Killed.
but yes, but the other grocery stores that were here, the one that used to be where Mike, no, not where Mike Murphy is, but by the bank,
Martin's.
Martin's.
Yeah.
And then there was a Country Market up in the.
Yes.
But those kinds of places haven't done very
They
well
were just making it.
anywhere
If-
anymore. The idea of the local grocery. And we
Yeah.
meant when we moved to the UK, you had sort of the typical little UK town where you've got the greengrocer and the butcher and the, well,
Bakery and-
they were beginning to have the same problems
Really?
that we were. So the person who would go in and knew the shop owner who would sell you cabbages and tomatoes and corn and, whatever, and comment on the quality of this, and,
Sure.
I've got the fresh of this today, and don't buy those, they're getting old, or whatever. Those little places were beginning to be lost as
Ah.
well. It's a global
And so
phenomenon.
sad,
It's
so
related,
sad.
it's related to scale and packaging, because a lot of those places didn't, my grandmother used to go shopping. I remember when I was a kid, she had a big market basket.
On her
It was
arm.
this big.
Oh my
You
goodness.
go to the greengrocer or the butcher shop and the,
Sure.
whatever, the poultry seller and whatever, and they'd wrap it up in brown paper and bring
That's
it home.
right.
Well, with the penetration of food goods by all of these people who a few years ago, we're sneaking arsenic and
Yeah.
whatever in our, you know,
Yeah,
food. All of the packaging laws now, sanitary laws, and
Yeah.
the questions about corporate liability means that everything's got to be sealed in plastic in a way that you get home and it takes you an hour to open the package. But
but at least you can be sure.
yes, but that has damaged partly. That's been part of, I think, what's damaged the kinds of people who say, you know, you went, okay, here's a, you know, pick as many onions as you want or don't want,
That's
or here's
right.
the fresh fish or whatever. So I think it's harder to do, but a
I
lot of it's
agree.
just economies of scale.
Yeah,
Big stores buy in volume, they can control their distribution
Yeah.
better than, you know, manage.
and
So
lower
it's
prices.
lower cost
Yeah.
for them, so, you know, lower cost to the consumer.
Yeah.
And it's just harder, but we did lose some, we tried hard. We talked to Hy-Vee, we talked to
Mm,
a couple of others. I think I went to Whole Foods one time, tried to get them interested.
yeah,
Just didn't happen, but it'd be wonderful if we had another place. But curiously enough,
yeah.
people find the alternatives. A lot of Mortonites go to Lindy's.
I know. That's true. I had a friend who was in Washington Christian Village nursing home, and that I would stop at Lindy's on the way home.
Well, I talked to Lindy's, the Economic Development Council, had a couple of conversations with them, and I talked to them personally, and they considered coming here. But they looked at the cost of building a modern grocery store,
Wow.
even taking over the old Rokey's
Yeah,
site.
yeah,
The cost to enter Morton was just too high a risk when they recognized that they had a core of Morton customers who would happily
That's
drive
true.
to Washington to
they're
shop
a
at
niche
Lindy's.
market. They're right.
And you
Mhm.
can't blame them for making that
Yeah.
decision.
They're a boutique store.
Yes,
They're
absolutely.
a boutique store, and
Yeah.
that's people are willing to pay that little extra for the good stuff that you get for their.
But someday we're gonna be 25,000 people. I think we're right up around 17,000 right now,
Yeah.
maybe a little more.
Yeah.
We get up around 25,000, that will change. That's kind of the tipping point.
Mm.
So I think if that happens, then we'll see another kind of investment here.
Mhm.
But we are, again, use the word unique. We are a unique community, and when we used to talk about some of the kind of investment around the community, I used to tell people there's a reason why Gary Effring put his Jaguar dealership on the other side of Peoria. That
Yeah.
we did a study,
Yeah.
and the buying characteristics of people with similar incomes and educations, North Peoria and Dunlap,
Right.
are different from those of Morton. And there is a whole
List of reasons.
field of psychographics having to
Mhm.
do with the kinds of how people spend their money and what their predilections are and so
Yeah.
forth that deal with that. And stores like Cabela's and Whole Foods and
Right.
the kinds of places that people talk about, why can't we get one of those? They've got staffs of people or rely on consultants who deal with these kinds of things, and they can say, if you go to this community, you've got X number of people who are potential shoppers for this kind of thing, and so much disposable income here, and they have
They-
breakpoints where they say you
Yeah.
you pass
Yeah.
the test or you don't. And in a
Right.
couple of cases, we've been right on the cusp,
Yes.
but we didn't quite make it. So I think eventually that will happen.
Yeah. One more question,
Yes.
and then I'm going to stop because
Okay.
it's 3 o'clock. How do you think the churches in Morton have influenced the quality of life, or do you think they have?
Well, clearly they have. And when we came here, the two predominant faiths were Mennonite and Apostolic.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say they had two clear characteristics. One was the quality of their commitment to their faith, and that was undeniable.
Yes.
The other was the extent to which they were insular.
Mm.
And it made it a little bit more difficult, perhaps, if you didn't belong to one of those faiths,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to navigate in the community in the way you might have if A, you had belonged to that
Sure.
faith, or if those churches had not been so prominent. On the other hand, you've got to say, and I consider myself a neutral observer, because I don't belong to
To
either,
either one.
you cannot argue anything but that the very strong
More.
characteristics of faith and moral position, business principles, family values, all those kinds of things are, to a large extent, what has made Morton Morton. And in fact, I think I did a piece on that for the Morton Times News once also. But it is something in our Morton DNA,
Yeah.
and a huge amount of that has come by way of contribution from the people who belonged to the, not to exclude other churches, but
Right.
but in the old days, those were the churches. We had 3 or 4
Mhm.
versions, for lack of a better word, of
Sure.
Mennonite, of persuasions of Mennonite,
It's true.
and then the Apostolics.
Mhm.
The
There
Pres-
was a Catholic
there was
mission.
Catholic, yes,
Mhm.
Catholic. When I first, the Catholic school was new. When I came here,
Mhm.
the Presbyterian congregation was small, and there was a Methodist congregation,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so they would, all of them contributed. But I think that you have to look and say those old world ideas that they brought in this journey, this immigration
Right.
from Switzerland and Alsace-Lorraine and Germany and all of them across the United States and here. They brought those ideas with them, with ideas about farming and small business and the way you did things, the way you treated your neighbors, and the
Yeah.
idea of self-help. If somebody's barn burns down, you pitch in and you help rebuild it. Somebody's business is in trouble, you go help them. If somebody gets sick and they can't get in the harvest, you go help
That's
Mrs.
right.
So-and-so get the harvest in
That's
because her
right.
husband's in bed with a
Laid
broken
up.
leg or
Yeah.
something. So I think that they have made an indelible and important impression on Morton, and all of the people who belong to those congregations ought to be very proud of what they've helped create.
You too. Well, I thank you for all this neat interview, and I congratulate you on being a big part of why Morton's like it is, because
Thank you.
twice on the planning commission
I don't-
trusteeship, that's pretty impressive.
I don't think I can take much credit for it. I am just one among many, but it was very gratifying to do.
Yes, that's great. Well, thank you very much. This is lots of fun.